Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. If you've been paying attention to the skeptic community in recent weeks, you'll have seen that Thunderf00t, also known as Dr. Phil Mason, and Sargon, also known as Carl Benjamin, forcefully disagreed with each other over Thunderf00t's characterization of a livestream Sargon was in. I think that enough time has passed now that passions are no longer running high, and I can take a look at this without it being jumping on a bandwagon or for clicks. As I've watched their respective videos, and some others on the subject, I believe that the skeptics, or skeptic and former skeptic, largely talked past each other, in part because they used the language of morality inherited from the Christian and classical traditions, which is not well suited to expressing their meaning. To show you what I mean, I propose to do a little translation. First, a very brief recap of the context. A male feminist who went by the name Russian Deadpool was arrested in connection with the murder of his former girlfriend, Ivy, where rumors, apparently sourced to a second girlfriend, stated that Russian Deadpool and Ivy were doing magic mushrooms when Russian Deadpool became paranoid and psychotic and attacked Ivy, killing her. Not long after the news became public, a skeptic by the name of V did a livestream with Sargon and several other skeptics talking about it, where more than a few tasteless jokes were made on the subject, some of which Sargon took issue with, some of which he laughed at, and at least one of which he made himself, asking viewers to pay their respects to his dead video game Frog immediately after they were asked to pay their respects to the dead girl. Thunderf00t, who for some time had been growing in dissatisfaction with the skeptic community, found his disgust at this livestream to be the perfect explanation of why he was leaving the skeptic community, and made a video in which he explained that, but focused most of his time and attention on Sargon and how awful the livestream feed was. Sargon made a response video in which he said he was happy to oblige in cutting off contact, but protested that Thunderf00t had misrepresented him, and gave a defense of himself. Thunderf00t made a video response in which he characterized Sargon's defense as the Sarkeesian defense, and Sargon made a response video to that in which he accused Thunderf00t of simply lying. I believe Thunderf00t made another response video to that. That's the context. Now, before I can give the translations of that, there's a bit of general moral background which I need to go over first for the translations I will propose to make sense. Both men are moral relativists, by which I mean they believe that what is commonly called morality is merely individual preference, generalized to groups with similar preferences. This is a necessary consequence of a belief in undirected evolution, as opposed to directed evolution, which most Catholics like myself believe in. In undirected evolution, what we call human beings have no spiritual component, which is to say that they are nothing more than sacks of proteins and acids, and some other stuff, which, as a system, make new sacks of proteins and acids, and some other stuff, that are pretty similar, but not exact copies. Over time, traits come to predominate both through natural selection. In some environments, a trait may be favorable or unfavorable to making new protein acid sacs, as well as by pure chance. Thus did we come about, with various things we are attracted to and various things we are repulsed by. In both cases, because they probably helped our ancestors come to make us, and at least didn't prevent them from doing so. For simplicity, I will call the set of these things preferences. You like food with fat and sugar and protein in it, you dislike being burned, having your hand eaten by a bear, and so forth. Now, some of these preferences concern what other protein acid sacs that look like you do, and these preferences get called morality, just like preferences for foods get called tastes, and preferences for leisure time activities get called hobbies. Now, these preferences for what other protein acid sacs do would be completely uninteresting, except that many of them have similar preferences about you, and so you can talk about your mutual preferences with them. What is traditionally called immoral really means repulsive in this technical sense. It's something that protein acid sacs like us tend to move away from. Thus, when Thunderf00t talks about Sargon's video being immoral, what he means is that he is repulsed by it. The reason he made a video is because he believes that most other protein acid sacs would be repulsed by it too, and so he's hoping to present them with a stimulus that would repulse them from Sargon rather than from him, since protein acid sacs like us also dislike disloyalty. In response, Sargon attempted to demonstrate that he did not in fact do something which would repulse most protein acid sacs like us, but instead it is Thunderf00t who did that, through dishonesty, by which he really means disloyalty for reasons I'll get to later. However, I think that Sargon was mistaken as to what repulsiveness Thunderf00t ascribed to him. Thunderf00t repeatedly said that Sargon was pushing a narrative, while Sargon reiterated that he never claimed that Russian Deadpool shot Ivy because of feminism. Thunderf00t did not, however, accuse him of saying those words. but rather of associating the two ideas by doing a live stream about the subject at all. When prominent members of an ideology, in this case skepticism, trademark, talk about a subject, it is understood by most who watch that they are doing this because it is related to their ideology. Since skepticism, trademark, is anti-feminist, and since Russian Deadpool is a feminist, speaking about the subject of Ivy slaying at all implicitly connects the two ideas in most protein acid sacs' typical reaction pathways. Sargon would probably disagree, but this disagreement is one of the major cruxes of them talking past each other. Moreover, it doesn't do any good to argue that protein acid sacs should not have these reaction pathways, because they couldn't help it. That's what led to their ancestors making them, so it's what they're stuck with. Should, as in, people should know better than this, or people should be able to understand an argument, or people should listen to what I said, not focus on where I said it, literally has no meaning here. The reactions protein acid sacs have are the ones which led to them being here, so it's the only way that they can act. This makes the defense Sargon mounted of himself irrelevant. What Thunderfoot was doing was not making factual statements about the world, but rather subjective statements about himself. That, together with his expectation that most others would react in the same manner that he did, if prompted with the same stimulus. Thunderfoot put together a video clip which conflated things not near each other, but understood as a representation of what Thunderfoot took away from watching the livestream, it is entirely accurate. As to whether he is right that most people would, watching the entire livestream, edit the thing together in their memories in the manner in which Thunderfoot did in his video, is pure speculation, of course, but it was only ever presented as a guess, if a fairly certain one. Sargon's annoyance at this presentation of Thunderfoot's impression is best understood as the published impression of Thunderfoot creating a new stimulus to which people can be exposed and to which they are more likely to react in the manner Thunderfoot did, because it is in fact selected according to Thunderfoot's reaction to it. Being a condensation of anti-Sargon stimulus, it is more dangerous to Sargon than the original. But any collection of highlights, selected with an anti-Sargon bias, would produce the same objection, that it is more likely to produce an anti-Sargon reaction than the original. That's no comfort to Sargon, of course, but it does explain why Thunderfoot would note similarities with Sargon's response and other people's responses to similar sorts of videos. It is, after all, the only possible response. On the other hand, who one compares people to associates them in protein acid sacs reaction pathways. Of course, that's most of the point of comparing them. So I hope it's clear now that this exchange was rather clouded by the use of moral language, when in fact the underlying meaning was very simple, and there was no real disagreement about it. The only things at issue were things which had to be at issue, because two people cannot fall out amicably. At its core, each was saying to the other, "I don't like you, and I think most people won't like you either." The rest was just sound and fury, signifying nothing. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.